imagine you're opening your primary banking app right now on your phone.
Okay.
You go to transfer a pretty significant amount of money, right, to pay your rent or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you look at the screen, the main submit button is like a slightly different, murkier shade of blue than it was yesterday.
Oh, no.
And the sought for your account balance has suddenly shifted from its usual, sleek, modern look to something that closely resembles Comic Sans.
That is horrifying.
Right, and the spacing between the numbers is just a little bit cramped. What is your immediate visceral reaction to that?
Total panic. I mean, you would immediately think the application had been compromised.
Exactly.
You'd assume you were looking at like a phishing scam or some hacked interface, and you would close the app immediately.
Yes. You wouldn't think, oh, the design team is just trying out a new aesthetic.
No, never.
You would feel this deep, subconscious sense of unease, and that feeling. That is the quiet, destructive power of visual inconsistency.
Yeah, it really is.
And when an application loses its internal consistency over time, it accrues what designers and developers call design debt.
I love that term. It's a fantastic way to frame it, because design debt isn't just an aesthetic annoyance, for the people building the app.
Right.
It translates directly into a degradation of user trust and usability. It is basically the digital equivalent of friction in a mechanical engine.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like one ungreased gear, maybe a single mismatched font, isn't going to stop the car.
Sure.
But 50 ungreased gears scattered throughout the transmission, that system is going to generate enough heat to eventually seize up and break down entirely.
Which brings us precisely to our mission today. Because if you are listening to this, you're likely at the beginning of your design career.
Right.
You're the learner here.
Welcome.
And you might be staring at a massive, complex product file right now, feeling completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of screens and states.
Oh, we've all been there. Staring at Figma, just sweating.
Exactly. And you want to understand how the professionals actually maintain order and pay down that friction without burning the engine to the ground.
Right.
So today, we are going completely under the hood. We're going to unpack the core design concepts from Chapter 27, UI Audit from the book Design User Interface.
And this is, arguably one of the most critical foundational skills you can develop.
Definitely.
We are going to take the incredibly practical methodology laid out in Chapter 27 and dissect it step by step. So by the end of this deep dive, you won't just know what an audit is.
You'll know how to do one.
Exactly. You will know exactly how to analyze a UI critically, mathematically, and systematically.
But before we get into the literal mechanics of an audit, I think we have to confront a very pervasive myth in the creative industry.
That was a trend myth.
Yeah, because when you say the word audit to a young designer, their immediate instinct is to treat it like a home renovation show.
Tear down the walls.
Right. They think, okay, we are bringing in glass morphism, we are adding brutalist typography. It's time to make this look like the #1 trending post on a portfolio site.
That instinct is incredibly common, and it is honestly the fastest way to derail your entire product.
Really?
Yeah. The methodology in Chapter 27 is very explicit about this. The goal of a UI audit is emphatically not to chase the current hot design trend.
But wait, isn't part of our job to make things look modern? I mean, if the app looks like it was built in 2012, shouldn't an audit fix that?
Well, modernizing is a natural byproduct of a good design system. But making it trendy is a trap.
No, so.
Think about the life cycle of software development. If you do a massive UI audit today specifically to match a brutalist design trend, you have to document it, get stakeholder approval, put it in the engineering sprint backlog.
It takes months.
Exactly. By the time the developers actually code and deploy those trendy changes 6 or 8 months from now, that trend has already rotted. The internet has moved on.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the trend cycle is just too fast.
Exactly. The real goal of a UI audit isn't a fashion makeover. It's a structural health check focused on 5 unshakable pillars.
Which are?
Consistency, readability, colors, accessibility, and general style.
So it's about establishing baseline reality. And the book points out something that feels almost like a law of digital physics.
Yeah.
It states that nearly all digital products get more chaotic with time. It doesn't matter if you are a solo designer or working at a massive tech giant.
Nope.
If a product is alive, it is actively degrading.
It is the absolute definition of entropy. Digital products are living, breathing ecosystems.
Right.
You have multiple designers jumping in and out of files, developers interpreting mock-ups differently, marketing teams demanding a button pop more for a specific campaign.
Always the marketing team.
Right, and constant hot fixes for edge case bugs. Over weeks and months, thousands of micro decisions are made in a vacuum, completely detached from the original design system.
Going back to our engine metaphor, it's like replacing a bolt here, adding a different size belt there, pouring in a slightly different viscosity of oil.
Yeah.
Or, it's like a messy closet. You don't intend for it to get messy, but after a few months of just throwing jackets in there, it's a total disaster.
That's a great analogy.
So an audit is taking everything out of the closet, laying every single piece on the floor, inspecting them, and putting it back together organized.
Precisely. You are hunting down the inconsistencies that are silently suffocating the user experience.
Okay, so we know our mission. We are taking the closet apart to pay down the design debt.
Right.
But staring at a massive product, say an e-commerce platform with hundreds of screens, is terrifying.
It's a lot.
How does a beginner actually initiate this process without immediately drowning in the complexity?
Well, this brings us to the setup phase, which is quality assurance and the absolute mandate to document everything.
Okay, let's talk about QA, quality assurance.
Yeah, design QA is widely misunderstood. Most beginners assume QA is strictly an engineering task.
Like developers running automated tests to ensure the database doesn't crash.
Exactly. But design QA is entirely different. Its fundamental purpose is to measure the gap between the idealized design, the perfect files you made in your software, and the actual coded product that currently exists in the real world.
Because what I design in my pristine vector software is almost never exactly what renders in a user's web browser.
Right. Never. The translation from design file to actual code always introduces mutations.
Always.
Always. Different browsers render CSS shadows differently. Mobile devices have varying safe areas. A developer might have looked at your 16-pixel margin and thought, that looks a bit tight, and just coded it as 20 pixels instead.
Oh, I've had that happen.
Right, so the QA process is the act of meticulously mapping that reality.
So practically, I'm sitting at my desk, I have my design software open on one monitor and the live application open on the other. What is the literal first step?
You open a blank shared document, and the word shared is non-negotiable here. Chapter 27 emphasizes using collaborative tools like Google Docs, Dropbox Paper, or whatever centralized wiki your team uses.
Wait. If I'm the one doing the audit, why can't I just use my own private notebook or a local file? Why do I need to broadcast my messy process to the whole team? Because I'd feel incredibly vulnerable exposing all the mistakes I'm finding, especially if some of them are my own.
That is a completely natural fear, but you have to overcome it because of a cognitive bias called inattentional blindness.
Inattentional blindness, what's that?
You are far too close to your own work. Your brain knows how the app is supposed to look, so it will literally overwrite the mistakes right in front of your eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You need a shared space because an audit is a team sport. Developers need to see the inconsistencies to understand why they are being asked to rewrite CSS.
Makes sense.
Product managers need to see the documentation to understand why you need 2 weeks of sprint time to fix button padding. If it isn't documented publicly, it basically doesn't exist.
That makes total sense. It acts as a source of truth for everybody.
Exactly.
Okay, my shared document is open. What goes into it?
An exhaustive inventory. You begin by documenting every single screen, every modal window, and every interaction the product possesses.
Okay.
But more importantly, Chapter 27 highlights the critical need to document the hidden states.
What exactly qualifies as a hidden state?
We are talking about the dark corners of the application, the error messages when a server times out,
Oh, right.
the state of an input field when a user types an invalid character into a password box, the empty state of a shopping cart before a user has added anything.
Or like a success notification that only flashes for 3 seconds.
Exactly. All of those.
Now, thinking about this from the perspective of you, the listener, the beginner, documenting every single error state sounds excruciatingly tedious.
It is.
If I'm looking at an app, 95% of a user's time is spent on the main dashboard, the feed, or the profile page. Why can't we just look at the main screens and call it a day?
Because the happy path is usually heavily scrutinized during the initial design phase. It's polished.
Right, everyone looks at the homepage.
Exactly. The design debt rarely lives in the spotlight. It thrives in the shadows. Think about it mechanically. When a developer is rushing to push a feature live on a Friday afternoon and realizes they forgot to code the invalid email warning,
Oh, no.
they aren't going to carefully consult the design system. They are going to quickly type a red 12-point Arial message directly into the code just to make it functional.
So the hidden states are the exact places where panic-driven, off-the-cuff decisions are made.
Exactly. If you only audit the main dashboard, your UI might look perfectly healthy. But beneath the surface, your error states are introducing rogue fonts, clashing colors, and broken spacing.
Wow.
To effectively answer the fundamental questions of an audit, like how many fonts do we actually use, you absolutely must force the application to break.
Right.
You have to type garbage into fields, disconnect your Wi-Fi to trigger offline states, and screenshot every single result.
I love that. You have to actively try to break the app to see its true colors.
Yep.
So we've spent days doing this. We've clicked every button, triggered every error, and our shared document is now overflowing with hundreds of screenshots. The closet is entirely emptied on the floor.
It's a mess.
Now we need to start analyzing the pieces. And if we follow the methodology of Chapter 27, the very first major inconsistency that usually jumps off the page isn't the layout, it isn't the imagery, it's the text.
Absolutely.
Let's look at how words on a screen can silently create chaos. The typography tangle.
Typography is at the structural foundation of digital communication, and yet it is almost universally the first thing to succumb to chaos.
Why is that?
It's just so easy to tweak, but the book gives us a highly effective analytical method for reining this in. You don't just look at the text and guess, you count the fonts.
Right, it advocates for a literal spreadsheet.
Yes.
You set up a table. In the rows, you list the font styles you discover. In the columns, you tally exactly how many times that specific style is used across the interface. And there is a genuinely shocking example provided in the chapter that illustrates why this is necessary. They audited a single login screen.
And keep in mind, a login screen is structurally one of the simplest interfaces in existence.
A logo, 2 input fields, a button, and maybe a forgot password link.
Right. It should be bulletproof.
But when they mapped it out in their spreadsheet, they discovered 8 entirely distinct font styles on that one single screen.
8.
They found Open Sans 11-point bold used 17 times, a 17-point medium used just once, 14-point regular used 15 times.
It's crazy.
14-point bold underline used 11 times, 19-point extra bold used twice, plus 2 completely different weights of a secondary font Pacifico at 20-point and 22-point.
It's a disaster.
8 different ways of displaying text just to let someone log in.
It sounds absurd when you hear the raw data, but you have to understand the psychology of how this happens organically.
How does it happen?
A designer builds a clean screen with 3 styles. A month later, the marketing director says users aren't seeing the forgot password link. Make it pop.
Make it pop.
Always. So the designer quickly changes it to 14-point bold underline. A week later, someone else decides the welcome greeting feels a bit weak, so they bump it up to an arbitrary 19-point extra bold.
Right.
None of these decisions are malicious. They are just isolated reactions that destroy the broader ecosystem.
But beyond just looking messy to a designer's eye, why does this actually matter to the person trying to log in?
That is the big question.
And this brings up what I consider one of the most critical nuggets of wisdom in the entire chapter.
Yeah.
The processing delay rule.
Yes. This rule is rooted deeply in cognitive psychology. Chapter 27 states a firm guideline. Try not to exceed 3 to 4 typographic styles per screen.
That feels incredibly restrictive. Only 3 or 4 variations of size and weight per page.
It is restrictive, but it is necessary because of how the human brain parses visual information.
Okay, walk me through that.
Every single time a user's eye lands on a piece of text, their brain subconsciously categorizes it. If it sees a large, bold font, the brain says, okay, this is a header, it introduces a new topic.
Right.
If it sees a small, blue, underlined font, the brain says, this is a navigational element, it will take me somewhere else.
So the font style is essentially a silent instruction manual.
Exactly. But if you put 8 different font styles on a screen, you're handing the user an instruction manual written in 8 different languages.
Oh, wow.
Every time their eye jumps to a new size or weight, their brain has to pause for a microsecond and reevaluate what that new style means.
Like, is this 17-point medium text a button? Is it a warning?
Exactly. This is just a subtitle. That hesitation is a processing delay. You are actively taxing the user's cognitive load just to decipher the hierarchy of your page.
It's the difference between listening to a well-rehearsed barbershop quartet and listening to a chaotic, crowded room.
Great analogy.
With 3 or 4 singers, you've distinct harmony, right? A lead, a bass, a tenor. It's easy to process the melody.
Yeah.
But with 8 people all singing different songs in different volumes, it's just noise.
Yeah.
Your typography stops communicating and just becomes visual static.
So the obvious next step is, how do we quiet the room?
Right.
The source methodology outlines a very straightforward consolidation strategy using your spreadsheet. You look for the outliers.
The rare cases.
Yes. You locate the font styles that only appear once or twice across the entire app. In our example, that 17-point medium used once, or the 19-point extra bold used twice.
Okay.
These are your prime targets for elimination.
And when you say elimination, you don't mean deleting the text itself, obviously. You mean reassigning it.
Correct. You safely map those rare cases to their nearest, most heavily used common style.
Got it.
That rogue 19-point extra bold can almost certainly just become the 20-point bold that you are already using everywhere else.
And the user will never notice the 1 pixel difference.
Never. But their brain will immediately recognize the established pattern.
And the chapter offers a really brilliant pragmatic trick for figuring out how to merge these styles. It says to look at the underlying function of the UI elements.
Yes.
If 2 things do the same job, they should probably wear the same uniform.
It's a great rule of thumb. The example given is comparing a text link, say a read more link, and the label inside a clickable button.
Okay.
Even though they look physically different, their underlying function is identical. They are both interactive elements that trigger an action or navigate the user elsewhere.
So logically, if you take the underline off the text link, the actual font size and weight could perfectly match the text inside your primary buttons.
Precisely.
You've just killed 2 styles and replaced them with 1,
Yeah.
reinforcing a single rule in the user's mind. When text looks exactly like this, it is clickable.
You methodically work your way down the spreadsheet, aggressively pruning the variations until you are left with a tight, deliberate typographic scale.
Less is more.
Exactly. You want a massive header, a subheader, a standard body copy, and a functional interactive style. Once you have that, the processing delays vanish.
Okay, so we've silenced the typographic noise, we've tuned the instruments, the text is readable, and the cognitive load is minimized. But typography is only 1/2 of the surface layer. The other element that dictates visual hierarchy and clutter is the palette.
Oh, yes. Colors.
Let's turn our attention to the UI's color system in Section 3. The color conundrum.
If typography drifts slowly, color drifts exponentially.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The method prescribed in the book is highly manual and incredibly revealing. The color picker audit.
Right. You open up the live app, you get a digital color picker tool, whether that's an eyedropper extension in your browser or a plugin in your design software.
Yeah.
And you ruthlessly sample everything. You grab the hex code for every background, every single button state, every icon fill, the text colors, and the subtle borders around your card.
And what you will discover is guaranteed to horrify you.
Why? What happens?
The book points out a universal truth. Over time, a product inevitably deviates from its meticulously crafted brand guidelines.
What?
You might have started the company with one singular, perfect brand blue, but during this audit, you will find 6 slightly different, mutated shades of that blue infecting the interface.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
How does that even happen? We all use digital tools. We have shared libraries in Figma or whatever. How does a designer accidentally use a hex code of, 005599 when the official blue is 0055A0? It's just numbers.
It happens through 100 tiny invisible workflows.
Like what?
Maybe a developer needed a hover state for a button, didn't have the design file open, and just dragged the color slider slightly darker in the CSS.
Oh, I see.
Or a classic designer mistake. You place a black rectangle over a blue background and set the black to 20% opacity to create a darker shade.
Right, I do that all the time.
Exactly. But when a developer uses a color picker on that layered element, they get an entirely new flattened hex code that doesn't exist anywhere in the brand book.
And suddenly you have a rogue color in the code base.
Yep.
The chapter also specifically calls out gradients as a massive source of silent debt.
Gradients are notoriously slippery. The book highlights that you might be using the exact same 2 colors for a gradient across the app, but the angles are entirely inconsistent. A button on the homepage has a gradient pulling horizontally from left to right, while a promotional banner on the next page uses the exact same colors but pulls diagonally from top left to bottom right.
It seems like a micro detail, but it subconsciously breaks the lighting physics of the interface.
Exactly.
It makes the app feel cheap. So I have done my eyedropper audit. I have a spreadsheet with 45 different hex codes, including 6 different versions of our primary blue and 12 different shades of gray.
A nightmare.
My immediate instinct, holding my digital sledgehammer, is to purge everything that isn't in the original brand book. If it's not the official blue, delete it. Should we just delete every color that isn't in the original brand book?
And that is exactly what the methodology warns against.
Really?
You cannot just blindly delete variations because you risk destroying functional solutions.
Okay.
You have to put away the sledgehammer and pull out a scalpel. You have to perform a purpose check.
A purpose check. Okay, so I am looking at a rogue, slightly darker blue that someone added to the code base. I have to figure out why they added it before I delete it.
Exactly. Was this mutation an accident or was it an evolution?
Evolution.
Let's say you investigate that darker blue. You look at where it lives in the app, and you realize it is only used when text needs to sit on top of a highly saturated photograph.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. The original pristine brand blue probably failed an accessibility contrast test when placed over that photo. It was unreadable.
So someone fixed it.
So a smart designer or developer purposefully introduced a darker, high-contrast variant to solve a legitimate usability problem.
Wow. If I just blindly deleted that darker blue and reverted to the brand guideline, I would actually be making the app less accessible and breaking the user experience.
Exactly. If the shade has a valid functional purpose, Chapter 27 instructs you to keep it.
Keep it.
But you don't just leave it as a rogue hex code, you legitimize it. You formally adopt it into your newly revised design system. You name it, brand blue high contrast so everyone knows its specific job. You only remove colors that are truly random or unnecessary. Exactly. Chapter 27 suggests taking your base color and creating variants by moving the brightness or lightness up and down in consistent mathematical increments.
For example,
experimenting with higher and lower brightness values, like taking the base color and logging a version at -10 brightness, -20 brightness, +10, +20.
Why is that safer than just picking a new color from the general area of the color picker?
Because manipulating only the lightness mathematically mimics how light works in the real world.
Oh, interesting.
Think about a physical blue coffee mug sitting on your desk. The side facing the window is a lighter blue. The side in shadow is a darker blue.
Yeah.
But it is fundamentally the exact same hue. Your brain understands that it is one object under different lighting conditions.
So by only shifting the brightness mathematically, we are ensuring the new colors are anchored to the same core identity. If we messed with the hue, making it slightly more purple, it would look like a completely different clashing object. This is brilliant because it turns color expansion from an arbitrary art into a predictable science.
Precisely. You end up with a robust, highly functional color system that feels perfectly cohesive.
Okay, so let's zoom out. We have standardized the typography, we've cleaned up the color palette and established a mathematical system for variants. We've cleaned up the surface level.
The paint and the wallpaper.
Right, but what about the underlying structure holding it all together? Pristine paint won't save a house if the wooden framing underneath is warped and uneven.
Very true.
This brings us to the actual objects, borders, grids, and the geometry of UI in Section 4.
The grid is the subconscious rhythm of a design. And what is uniquely fascinating about Chapter 27's approach is that it doesn't tell you to just arbitrarily slap a new 12-column grid over your existing app.
Which is what everyone tries to do.
Right. Instead, it asks you to play digital archaeologist. You have to reverse engineer the grid that is already hiding, broken, and buried within the product.
I love this concept. How exactly do we excavate a grid?
The methodology walks us through this, specifically using a mobile application as the example.
Okay.
The excavation starts at the edges. You take your measuring tool and you find the most frequently used margins separating the main content from the physical edge of the phone screen.
Just the empty white space on the far left and right.
Yes. You measure that gap across multiple screens. And what you are hunting for is what the book refers to as magic numbers.
Let's talk about these magic numbers. If I measure the side margin and it is a completely random number, say 11 pixels or 13 pixels, what does that tell me?
It tells you that the initial designer was placing elements entirely by eye without any mathematical foundation. There is no grid.
Ah, gotcha.
But if you measure it and you hit certain specific values, you have found the bedrock. The foundational numbers listed in the chapter are 10, 12, 15, 16, 20, or 24.
Now, out of that list, The book highlights a very specific rule for mobile apps. It explicitly states that the recommended value for that base side margin should be 16 and above. Why 16? Why is that the gold standard?
It operates on two levels. First is purely visual. Anything less than 16 pixels on a modern smartphone feels claustrophobic.
Yeah, too cramped.
The text needs breathing room, otherwise it feels like it's spilling off the physical edge of the glass. But secondly, and more importantly, it ties into the mechanics of the 8-point grid system.
Ah, the 8-point grid. Let's explain why the number 8 is so ubiquitous in digital design. It's not just a random preference, it's tied to the hardware, isn't it?
Exactly. Digital screens are made of pixels, and screen resolutions naturally scale in multiples of 2.
Right.
An 8-point grid is brilliant because the number 8 divides cleanly into 4, 2, and 1. This means when you design an element on an 8-point grid, and it scales up or down across different retina displays and pixel densities, it always renders cleanly on whole pixels.
You don't end up with half pixels.
Right, which cause blurry, anti-aliased edges. 16 is a perfect multiple of 8, making it an incredibly robust, mathematically sound foundation.
Okay, so I've measured the side of my app, and I found a 16-pixel margin. I have the foundation. But one number isn't a grid system. How do I find the rule that governs the entire app?
You find the rule by looking for the relationships between the spaces. Once you have your base of 16, you look at the next largest gap in the UI.
Okay.
For example, measure the vertical white space between two different content cards, or between a headline and the paragraph below it.
And if that second, larger spacing value is a multiple of the first?
Then you have officially found the rule governing the design. If your side margin is 16 and the space between your cards is 32 and the space separating major sections is 48 or 64, you have a rule.
Everything is scaling in multiples of 16.
Exactly. It's a rhythmic progression. And once you have that rule documented, the audit becomes incredibly objective.
Because if I'm checking a new screen and I find a gap that is 27 pixels, I don't need to debate whether it looks right.
No debate needed.
I know definitively that it is designed at, and I can confidently snap it back to 32 pixels to restore the rhythm.
Precisely. It removes all subjective argument from the QA process. But this geometric harmony doesn't just apply to the invisible white space.
What else?
The book insists it must extend to the physical drawn objects on the screen. The UI elements themselves must share a mathematical language. The chapter calls this icon and field harmony.
Let's break that down, because it's a detail that separates amateur designs from enterprise-grade products.
It's about ensuring that the components look like they were manufactured in the same factory. The book provides a very clear example regarding stroke weights.
Okay.
If you are using outline icons, meaning icons drawn with a thin line rather than filled with solid color, you must match their thickness to the other outlined elements in your UI.
So if I have a form input field where the user types their email address, and that box uses a 2-pixel border width,
Then your outline icons must also use an exact 2-pixel border width.
like the little envelope icon next to it.
Exactly. If the box is a heavy 2-pixel line, but the icon is a delicate, wispy 1-pixel line, they feel disconnected. They don't belong to the same family.
And this matching goes even deeper than just line thickness. It goes into the curvature of the objects.
Oh, absolutely.
The border radius of the form should define the radius of the icon shapes. So a rounded text field must be accompanied by rounded icons.
This is a classic hallmark of a fragmented design system. You see it all the time.
Yeah.
A designer creates a beautiful, soft, pill-shaped input field with fully rounded edges. But then they pull a magnifying glass icon from an entirely different library, and the handle of the magnifying glass is a rigid, razor-sharp rectangle.
The dissonance is jarring.
It really is. The parts are just fighting each other.
Yeah.
But the chapter does offer a very practical concession here, which is a massive relief for anyone who has ever tried to design custom vector icons.
What's the concession?
It says you don't need to count the exact pixels for multi-shape icons.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right, because geometry is very complicated on a micro level. You can easily set the border radius of a simple rectangle to exactly 8 pixels. But if you are drawing a complex icon of a gear or a shopping cart, trying to force every single tiny internal vector point to an exact 8-pixel curve will destroy the shape of the icon. It will look melted.
So how do we maintain harmony without ruining the icons?
The book advises to look at the general icon shape from a macro perspective. You are aiming for an overall perceived roundness that feels similar.
Yep.
You just want to avoid an icon feeling aggressively too sharp or cartoonishly too round relative to the input fields it sits next to. It is about optical balance, not rigid pixel counting.
Okay, so let's recap our progress. We've aligned the static shapes.
Yep.
But a UI isn't a painting, it's a machine people touch. Let's analyze the parts of the interface the user actually interacts with in Section 5, Interactive Elements and Sizing.
This is where we audit the literal tactile experience of the product.
And the methodology lays out a two-part process for auditing sizes.
Right.
Part 1 is finding elements that are simply too small or too big, and Part 2 is finding items that are inconsistent with one another.
Let's tackle part 1 first.
Yeah, because the book gives us some hard, non-negotiable metric limits on what can be considered a clickable target, the hard limits of clickability.
These limits are perhaps the most important numbers for a beginner to commit to memory. The source explicitly reveals that interactive elements smaller than 20 pixels in height on a desktop or smaller than 40 pixels on a phone are too small.
20 pixels for a desktop and double that, 40 pixels for a phone. Let's explain the underlying mechanics of why there is such a massive discrepancy between those two environments.
It entirely comes down to the input device the user is wielding.
Okay.
When you are on a desktop or a laptop, you are operating a mouse or a trackpad. The mouse pointer on the screen is an infinitely precise 1 pixel point.
Right, you have fine motor control.
Exactly, so hitting a target that is only 20 pixels high is relatively easy.
But when you switch to a mobile phone, the input device changes completely. You are no longer using a precise 1 pixel pointer, you are using a human thumb.
And human thumbs are blunt, fleshy, imprecise instruments.
Yeah, they are.
We call it the fat finger problem in UX design. The text explicitly states that the smaller the height, the harder it is to click with a mouse or tap on a touchscreen.
If you design a beautiful submit order button on an e-commerce mobile site, but it is only 30 pixels tall, you are actively sabotaging your own business.
Absolutely.
Users will try to tap it, miss by 2 pixels, and tap the background instead. Nothing will happen.
And they get frustrated.
Exactly. 40 pixels is the absolute minimum threshold to ensure a comfortable, error-free tap for a human finger.
So part 1 of the interactive audit is essentially sweeping the app, finding any button, link, or toggle under those strict limits and scaling them up.
That ensures the user can physically use the app.
Right.
Part 2 is more subtle. It's hunting for subtle inconsistencies between items that might be the right size, but are internally chaotic.
You can have an interface where every button is a safe 48 pixels tall, but it still feels like a disjointed mess. Our projects are riddled with buttons that look similar at a quick glance, but suffer from varying stroke widths in radio buttons, mixed icon styles and checkboxes, or different inner padding around button labels.
Oh, inner padding. I see that constantly. It's the absolute lowest hanging fruit.
Inner padding is a classic design debt indicator.
Explain how this happens, because you will often audit an app and find 2 submit buttons on 2 different pages. Both are functionally 48 pixels tall.
Right.
But on page 1, the word submit is huge, crammed right up against the top and bottom borders of the button with barely any breathing room.
Yeah.
And on page 2, the word submit is tiny, floating in a massive sea of empty blue space inside the button.
It goes back to a lack of shared components. 2 different developers coded 2 different buttons without referencing a central rule for padding.
Right.
The text notes that active, interactive elements are the most essential part of any design because they are the engines of conversion. You have to keep them as internally consistent as possible for clarity.
So a button shouldn't just be the same height.
No, it should have the exact same top, bottom, left, and right internal padding universally.
And this leads to a quote from chapter 27 that I think is incredibly profound. It says, "Most common UI problems are often the easiest ones to fix."
It is the silver lining of the entire audit process.
It really is. Think about it. Just normalizing a button's inner padding across an app instantly elevates the entire experience from amateur to professional.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't require a massive strategic pivot. It requires changing maybe 2 lines of CSS code. But it has an outsized impact on user trust.
Because users subconsciously equate visual precision with functional security. If a bank can't align the padding in their transfer button, why should I trust them to securely route my money?
Exactly.
Fixing these easy problems yields disproportionately huge results.
So we've ensured our buttons are big enough for a thumb to tap, and we've ensured they are perfectly consistent. Making a button 40 pixels tall ensures a user can tap it, but can they actually see it clearly? This leads us to the final check of our audit. Accessibility. Section 6. Accessibility and non-essential elements.
Accessibility is not an afterthought, it is a fundamental requirement. However, Chapter 27 provides a very specific timeline for when to conduct this analysis.
When is that?
It explains that accessibility analysis is best left for after fonts and colors are defined.
Which makes perfect logistical sense.
Yeah.
If I test the contrast of that rogue, slightly too light blue, on day 1 of the audit,
Right.
and then on day 3 I decide to delete that blue entirely, I've just wasted my time testing it.
Exactly. You have to lock down the finalized palette and typographic scale first. The simplest starting point is using a contrast checker plugin to ensure essential elements meet WCAG rules.
Let's define that acronym for the listener. WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Yes.
It relies on a mathematical formula calculating the relative luminance between a text color and its background color.
Right. And any failures must be pointed out in the audit documentation.
It's a mandate. But, reading closely, what about a special interface version for vision-impaired users? The chapter points out a fascinating nuance.
Yes, the book asks an insightful question. If you have one, that changes the testing parameters.
Like a dedicated high contrast mode or a dark mode specifically engineered for maximum legibility.
Exactly. If the development team has invested the resources to build a specialized, fully compliant, alternate version of the interface, the default aesthetic can theoretically prioritize brand colors that might live on the borderline of contrast compliance.
Because there's a safety net.
Right, knowing that a fully accessible safety net exists for the users who need it.
But beyond that structural exception of having a whole separate mode, there's another incredibly important nuance. The text brings up non-essential elements.
Another specific exception, yeah.
Like decorative non-essential objects.
Yeah.
The example the book uses is a light soft shadow under a product card. Now wait, if a shadow fails a contrast test, isn't that an accessibility violation? Shouldn't every single pixel rendered on the screen pass the test?
It is a totally valid concern, but we have to synthesize the underlying logic based entirely on what the text explains.
Right.
It clarifies that it is accepted for these decorative elements to fail the contrast test only if the design hierarchy is easy to understand without them.
Okay, let's break that down with an analogy.
Yeah.
How does that work in practice?
Let's stick with the product card example. Imagine a white product card sitting on a very light gray background.
Okay.
If that card has a strong, bold, typographic headline, a clear product image, a visible price tag, and maybe a subtle but contrast-compliant borderline, the user's brain can effortlessly group that information together.
Right, they see the card.
They understand exactly where the bounds of the card are. The soft, low-contrast shadow sitting underneath it is just aesthetic flair.
It's decoration, not structure.
Right, so if the card elements have a clear enough hierarchy, the background shadow is not needed to define its bounds. Therefore, the shadow is deemed non-essential and is not required to pass the strict contrast test.
Ah, I see. But what if there is no borderline? What if the card is pure white, sitting on a pure white background, and the only thing visually separating the card from the background is that soft shadow?
Then the shadow is no longer decorative wallpaper, it has become a load-bearing wall.
Wow.
It is the sole element defining the boundaries of the interactive component. In that specific scenario, the shadow becomes essential, and therefore, it must pass the test.
That is such a brilliant distinction. It requires the designer to critically evaluate what is structural and what is just paint.
Exactly.
All right, this has been an incredible journey. We have methodically walked through the entire anatomy of a UI audit. Typography, color, spacing, interactivity, accessibility.
It's an exhaustively comprehensive list.
It is. And frankly, it is a lot of work. So now, as we move into the outro, I have to ask the ultimate practical question. What do we actually do with this giant list of findings?
This is where the mindset shifts. The text provides what we can call the executive summary perspective.
Okay.
It explains that this simplified checklist method isn't just for fixing things, it's a communication tool.
A communication tool for who?
For the stakeholders, the product owners, the engineering leads.
Because if I just walk into a meeting and say, hey, the app feels a bit messy, they are going to ignore me.
Exactly. Feeling messy is subjective, but when you start your report with easy-to-digest findings, it's much easier to convince stakeholders and product owners to act upon the problems.
You are saying, here is the exact mathematical proof. We have 8 different fonts on login, our buttons are 10 pixels too small, we have 14 undocumented shades of blue.
Precisely. The audit is your leverage.
And for the beginner listener, the expert gives final advice. Building the habit. Try to make a habit of checking your every design.
Auditing yourself will help with creating good habits for future designs. Even if an eye for color and fonts takes time to develop, simply mastering consistency, contrast, and object sizing will bring your work to the next level.
That is incredibly empowering. Now, before we wrap up, we need to be very clear about where this invaluable information came from. Every concept today is from Chapter 27, UI Audit of the book Design User Interface.
A phenomenal resource.
You can find it at https.hype4academy.gumroad.com/Lou book. You can buy the book by scanning the QR code of the book link provided in the description below. Truly check it out. And please follow for more technical design breakdowns and career building content.
But before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder based on the source text.
What is it?
If, as the text states, nearly all digital products get more chaotic with time, is design debt an unavoidable law of digital physics? And if so, should we be designing our UI systems not just for how they look on day one, but building in intentional decay protocols or scheduled expiration dates to force these audits?